Hi, I'm John Peter, Curator and Plant Records Manager at the Royal Botanical Garden.
My name is Chris Tarrant and I am the Manager of Plant Propagation and Production here at RBG.
Good morning, my name's Alex and I'm the Curator of Collections at Royal Botanical Gardens.
We're here to answer your gardening questions.
This question comes to us from Doreen in Hamilton. She asks, we have two very large red maples in our side yard. Nothing will grow around about 5 feet at the base of the tree, including grass. What can we plant in this area? This is a great question, a very common question. Maples in general have a very shallow root system and a dense canopy of leaves, which creates a very dry shade environment to grow plants in, and it's oftentimes very difficult. The first question to ask, is this tree really a red maple, Acer rubrum, our native red maple, or is it a purple-leaved Norway maple? The two often get confused. Either way, like I said, maples have that shallow root system and it's hard to grow things within there. So a few plants that I would recommend are some natives, some tough natives like sedges. You could look for Carex rosea, the rosy sedge, or Carex plantaginea, Carex pennsylvanica are all great sedges to grow in that type of situation. You could look at things like heartleaf asters, Symphyotrichum cordifolium, or Eurybia divaricata, another great aster for dry shade. And then a nice ground cover species is our wild ginger, Asarum canadensis. You could also plant things like wood ferns and bellworts. Some shrubs to think about would be Direvilla, the bush honeysuckle, maybe some fragrant sumac, Rhus aromatica, and even our native witch hazel, Hamamelis virginiana, would do great in that type of situation. A few other things to think about is to have some work done in the canopy of the tree to thin the branching to minimize the shade that it's creating. You may also want to apply well-composted leaf mulch or wood chip mulch to the area below your tree on a regular basis, and then never exceeding about 3 inches. That will create some soil and help to hold moisture in that situation. My only other thought is to try to grow some containers in the shade. So get a nice grouping of containers of various sizes and plant them up with things like hostas or other shade-loving perennials that you can water and that won't be exposed to that dry soil at the ground layer, and you can have some nice fertile soil in the containers. Best of luck.
This question asks, what do you do at RBG to protect your bulbs and corms from ending up in the intestinal tracts of those varmints? Well, we get a lot of squirrel activity, a lot of chipmunks, and of course the deer munching along in the springtime. So what we do after planting is we will spread a product called blood meal over the ground to deter any of the rodents from digging them up, and then in the springtime after the snow's gone we'll apply more blood meal to the emerging foliage, and that helps to deter and detract any animals from feeding off the foliage. However, the downside to the blood meal is the fact that it is affected by rain. So once the rain comes down, and heavy rains, long periods of rain, it will wash the product off, so we will have to reapply it. So typically, it could be anywhere up to 10 times of the season, depending upon the weather, for us to apply the product. There are some other methods that you can use. I have known cayenne pepper to be successful, treated exactly the same way as the blood meal. It has to be applied as a powder, and any rain comes down, washes it off, so you have to reapply. There are other products, retail products on the market. One of them is called Scoot. This can be applied to any plant material. It doesn't have to be just bulbs, but this is a deterrent for rodents as well. It has some surfactant applications to it, so it will last on the plant for some time, but any heavy rainfalls or long periods of rain will cause the product to wash off, so you'll have to reapply it. Hope this helps with the gardening, and good luck.
And I've got an awesome question from Courtney, who lives in Hamilton. And Courtney asks the following. My balcony faces northwest and gets lots of shade and some direct sun. I'm just wondering what kinds of flowers and plants would do well growing best in that situation. Well, Courtney, I hope you'll be pleased to know that there are lots of plants that will do well on your balcony. And if you've got a pencil and some paper, we can make a little list together so that you can start planning for an outstanding, awesome summer experience on your balcony. So let's start with a few plants that flower. So if I was you, I'd be looking at things like begonias and impatiens. Fuchsias, which are an outstanding plant and don't get used anywhere near enough, would do really well out there. An interesting plant called larkspur. An interesting perennial called Jacob's Ladder, which is an awesome plant and also underused. I think violets would do very well for you out there. And a few plants that have got really, really spectacular flowers would be bleeding heart, astilbe, and toad lily. Those would look spectacular out there. You really enjoy seeing those on your balcony, I'm sure. However, you might want to mix that up with a little bit of foliage. So as you might expect, ferns would do very well on your balcony, as would sedges, which are sort of almost like a dwarf, like grass-like looking plant, so would go really well with the ferns. There's a plant called coleus, which is very fashionable right now and has like very, very colourful foliage and would add a splash of colour without flowers. As would coral bells. The foliage for coral bells also comes in different colours and a very, very attractive plant. However, if you want to step it up a little bit, you might want to think about growing some herbs and vegetables. So if I was you, I'd be thinking about looking at mint and parsley, maybe oregano. And you could also try peas, spinach and lettuce. So that's a really great way to enjoy your balcony in an edible sense and get you to sit out there even more. What a great idea that would be. There are also some succulents you can grow out there which would do very well. So I'd be looking at plants like crassulas and sedums. I think they'd do really, really well for you on your balcony. And maybe one thing you'd not thought about would be, what about if you brought some of your house plants out onto the balcony? I normally do that with mine during the summer. It freshens them up, makes them look good, and it adds a different kind of like texture and feel to what you've already got planted out there. And then if you really want to talk about the plant for the balcony, it would be hostas. So hostas come in all kinds of shapes and forms, leaves that big to that big. They come in different coloured leaves, they produce purple flowers. They're a winning plant, so I don't think you'd go very wrong with hostas. Sky's the limit with hostas. So I hope that's helped, Courtney. It's a pretty big list of plants to choose from. You've pretty much got a full garden out there to choose from when you look at the list. So I hope you have a great summer and you enjoy the plants, and thank you for such an interesting question.